Good morning, everybody. Hey, are you there? I'm looking. I don't see anybody yet. Where are you guys hiding? I know you'll be there in a few moments. This is Hot Rod Bob, and you've got gas. The Great American Auto Scene. This is your morning edition. How you doing? All right. Well, this weekend was really busy. Daytona got rained out. The president cruised the track. Probably the first time a president's done that. Okay. And there was a lot of excitement going on. The Arctic Arrow, a rocket-powered racer that runs on snow. Yeah, they were shooting for the record. Kai Michelson behind the effort. And they got, they got to 241 miles an hour before the thing went every which way but straight. It broke up. Not too bad, they say. Driver walked out of it, no problem. They were shooting for 247 miles an hour, only managed 241 on a snowmobile. Basically, it's a dragster on snow, so that makes it a snowmobile, I guess. Kai Michelson, I've met him a few times, saw him up in Bonneville this past year. Neat guy, we've talked a lot. He is known as the Rocket Man in the racing industry, and he's piloted and built and been involved with rocket-powered cars for decades. And that's how he got the name Rocket Man. So he continues his efforts. They'll go back, they'll fix this car, and they know what went wrong. They'll fix it. Well, if they don't know, they will know. Driver came out unscathed. They interviewed him on TV right after the accident, and he was all right. I'm sure he's a little on the sore side now. 241 miles an hour tumbling in the snow. Not something I'd want to do, but hey, go for it, guys. Look, we all have our desires when it comes to cars, racing, speed, or showing, or what have you. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, or one is dumb, or one is smart. You know what? This is a car hobby. You're watching this because you're a car enthusiast, and that's the important part. It doesn't matter what vehicle you choose to embrace, whether it's a Nissan, a Chevrolet, a Ford, an Oldsmobile, or a Daewoo. Let me think about that Daewoo part for a bit, would you? Anyway, cars are cars. Four wheels. Hot rodding is hot rodding. Doesn't matter what the brand is. Whatever you decide to modify, whatever you decide to work on, whatever you decide to drive, that's your choice. And you've got to be happy with it. Whether it's on the snow, on the salt, or on the asphalt. Cars and the enthusiasm for them and what they can do or what they can be made to do is why you're watching this right now and what we do. So when we look at the car industry, I look at it as a whole industry. It doesn't matter what the brand is or where it comes from, but it does affect how we see cars here in the United States. So every car has a story, and it has a story that pertains to the automotive industry. One of the stories that just came out was that Generous Motors, in their infinite wisdom, is shutting down and eliminating the Australian brand called Holden. Now, Holden's been around since the early 1900s. As a matter of fact, they assembled the Model T for Henry Ford in Australia. They started out in the 1800s and progressed into motor cars when they came about in the early 1900s. Now, they had a very strange and troublesome history. At one point in time, Holden accounted for 50% of the sales of automobiles manufactured in Australia. 50% market share. That's amazing. Now, I've driven some Holden-produced vehicles, the GTO. Well, not the early GTO, but the one that came about in the 2000s. Neat car. Loved it. Now, it was the Holden Monaro in Australia. We sold it as the Pontiac GTO. Now, the basis of the suspension and chassis on the Camaro and the Cadillac CTS-V was also part of the Zeta project, I believe it was, Generous Motors, which Holden used on a number of their vehicles. Oh, let's see. I'll pull this up here. Dennis Burnham, how you doing this morning? The current Chevy SS Well, not current because they're not selling it anymore because Holden's not making it anymore. The Cadillac CT-SV, again, Holden chassis design base. The Camaro in 2010, when they brought it back after GM realized the error of their ways, dropping the Camaro in 2002, they brought it back in 2010. All the Ford guys going, yeah, goodbye Camaro. Anyway, it came back, and it's come back stronger. Now, the Pontiac G8 was the predecessor to the Chevy SS as we have now. Both Holden products, rebadged and kind of changed a little bit for the U.S. market. But Holden, over its years, had so many other vehicles that it sold in its home market. They were really not focused, from what I can see. They sold Chevrolets, they sold Isuzus, they rebadged Nissans, Opels, Suzukis, even Toyotas. Now here's a real interesting situation. At one point in time, Holden's, their home-built engine in Australia, wouldn't pass emissions. They couldn't convert it to unleaded fuel that was being required by the Australian government. They used Nissan engines. They rebadged Nissan products. The U.S. Nissan Pulsar, which was the Japanese Cherry, was sold as a Holden. They rebadged it. They rebadged Daewoo's. They rebadged Toyotas. They rebadged or built GM cars down in Australia. So they never had a real strong focus. And over their production life, they started losing sales. They went from 50% to just 17%, I believe it was, that I saw quoted, of the Australian market. Now, GM got involved in 1931 when Holden was struggling. They infused a lot of money into it. Holden started out as a saddle company in 1856. Okay. They built the Model T. They were a U.S. subsidiary to General Motors. And they used Canadian-built GM or Chevrolet engines in their products in Australia. And that's why when you look at the Pontiac GTO that they produced and the Pontiac G8 and later the Chevy SS, they have LS Series V8 engines. They sourced them out of Canada. General Motors engines, Chevrolet primarily is what we call them now, but LS Series motors nonetheless. They had their own V8 engines at one point in time, the biggest being 5 liters, 508 cubic, or not 500, 400, or let's see, 308, very small, 5 liters, so about 308 cubic inches. They sold Daewoo's. They sold worldwide. Now, they exported a number of vehicles. Their latest truck, though, was an Isuzu, and they called it a Colorado. I've looked at the pictures. Look at a Chevrolet Colorado. Same truck. So although General Motors divested themselves of Isuzu, Holden did not. Holden rebadged the Isuzu truck built in Thailand as their pickup truck, their Colorado. Before that, they called it a rodeo. So did Isuzu's. Well, they didn't call their truck a rodeo, but you get the idea. So they rebadged a number of vehicles. But we're losing a brand. We're losing another manufacturer. Holden intertwined with so many companies. Suzuki, Daewoo, Nissan, Toyota, Ford. But they couldn't focus. Now, was that because of General Motors being part of them? I don't know. Although we've seen it. The demise of Isuzu vehicles in the U.S., passenger vehicles that is, was because of General Motors. The demise of Daewoo in the U.S. was partly because of General Motors. The end of Oldsmobile, Oakland, which became Pontiac, which General Motors closed, is all General Motors. So here's an affiliate in a country where they had 50% of the market share. And now, General Motors announces Holden is gone. The nameplate, Gone. They're not even going to be an importer anymore. They're closing the doors. This leaves the doors open for Nissan, Toyota, which is really strong in Australia, and other imports. So here is a country losing its own captured automotive manufacturing industry. Not just a business, but a whole industry. It's gone. Gone. Not to return. Holden will never be resurrected. General Motors will see to that. Now, what will General Motors import or export to Australia? Probably nothing. The Australians didn't like the U.S.-built vehicles. They weren't real wild about the Japanese vehicles that Holden was rebadging either, being somewhat on the narrow side, even though they were accepted as their main brand. Who knows? But another manufacturer bites the dust. We've lost so many in my lifetime. DeSoto, Plymouth, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Mercury. The list can go on. The automotive market is not really slowing down in total sales. It's changing its complexion. And what were once called imports are now made right here in the United States. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio. Those are places where what was called an import is now being made. Now, I worked for a couple of import companies that produce vehicles here in the U.S. now, and they produce enough that they export them as well. BMW, Nissan, Isuzu at one point in time. Of course, General Motors stopped that. But the auto industry is changing its complexion. The cars that we drive are changing, and we need to change with it. There are things that are good about what's coming about. There are things that are not so good that's coming about. Yes, Robert Roth, manufacturing in Texas, but they lost some manufacturing in Texas as well, as we did here. Now, look at the jobs we lost here in California. Almost every major manufacturer of the U.S. market produced vehicles here in Southern California or Northern California. Where Tesla produces cars now, both GM and Toyota built cars. They don't anymore, and Tesla's taken over that factory. There were factories in Long Beach. There was Van Nuys. I lived across the street from the General Motors plant in Van Nuys, California, when I was a kid, when I first moved to California. Every manufacturer produced vehicles, a U.S. manufacturer, here on the left coast. They're gone. They've shrunk. If you look at their market share, they've shrunk. Which will be the next company to go away in the U.S.? Who knows? Chrysler Corporation is owned by Fiat now. They were owned by Mercedes for a while. GM is still standalone. Ford's still a standalone. But what other American manufacturers are there anymore? They're not. They merged, or they combined, or they just went away. And yeah, Robert, Toyota's Tundra is being built in San Antonio, Texas. Nissan's pickup truck in Smyrna, Tennessee. Who knows where else they will move to? But I can tell you this one thing. They're not moving to California. As a matter of fact, we've lost many of the manufacturers that were based here. Nissan's in Tennessee. Mitsubishi, acquired by Nissan, moved to Tennessee. Toyota moved to Texas. They're leaving. And with them, they're taking thousands of jobs. With them, they're taking an infrastructure, a tax base that California is losing. Now, you can take any political position you want on that, but the car industry is changing, and we need to change along with it. Okay, Monday Soapbox. Don't need to be there anymore. You guys have a great day. It was a great weekend. Unfortunately, Daytona 500 didn't happen. A lot of rain. They don't race in the rain. Oh well, stuff happens. I think I've got it recording now, but I don't even know what time it starts today. And frankly, I really don't care. It's a race. I go to races every week. I'll be at Irwindale. Twice this week. That's right. We're racing twice. Thursday night, Thunder, Test and Tune. You're going to have some fun. Then Saturday, February 22nd, it's Match Race Madness. Oh, the disease continues on with match racing galore at Irwindale Drag Strip. Check it out on the website. I hope to see you there. Tuesday's going to be cool. We'll talk about cars again tomorrow. I'm Hot Rod Bob, and you've got Gas, the morning edition. You guys have a great day. I know I'm going to have one.